Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about the relationship between dynamic effort work and max effort work. The thing that we have to understand, these are all just different tools that we use to develop higher force production. Because strength is the production of force against an external object, and it's something that is useful in every single sport. And that's one reason I've said stuff like the conjugate method is my preferred method for training most of my athletes. Okay, not it doesn't mean I always do it for just the general pop lifter who just wants to get big and strong, because a lot of them they don't necessarily want to do this system. When they come on board, I could put everyone on it, and there was a time when I did. Like almost all of my clients, 90% of them ran this system. But I branched out a little bit. But here's the thing that we need to understand: it works very well for all athletes because it focuses on force production combined with hypertrophy and conditioning. So when we start looking at this relationship between these things, some people will say stuff like, well, it doesn't matter because powerlifting is not a speed strength sport. And whether it is or not, and whether speed strength affects the big three to a great degree, I say is irrelevant to the way that we program speed work. Now, I don't think that that's the case, because a lot of times I'll hit a heavy lift that is very, very close to an all-out max, and I have people say, man, that went up super fast. It looked like an opener. And I'm like, that was over 600 pounds, okay? I can't deadlift 700, right? Not even close. So, how close to max do you really think that was? But it was like a 2-second rep. Bam. So it comes down to understanding that being faster can be better, and a lot of us need speed strength to complete heavy lifts. We can't grind as well. So, it depends on the person's genetics to some extent, I think. But that being said, we need to understand the relationship between these things in terms of programming, because generally speaking, the more that we can lift heavy, in theory, the stronger we're going to get, the more we're going to maximize our strength potential. But our problem is, and what I've found, what they found at Westside and everything else, is that when we lift truly heavy, more than once a week, twice a week, upper and lower, that recovery becomes an issue, right? And of course, we rotate movements to help with that. We rotate movements to help with preventing overuse, but we need that heavy work, right? But we don't recover from it easily. And I know that because I used to do 4-day max effort, and you do get more beat up. It requires more frequent deloading, and we shouldn't be doing things that force us to deload if we can avoid it. That's one of the bigger problems with stuff like the 5-3-1 type system, is that it requires more frequent deloads. Okay, that's not always a good thing, and I'm not saying we should never deload. What I'm saying is we need to be careful about wasting training weeks deloading if we could get the same training stimulus and adaptation without doing them. We're not losing those weeks, because when we have to deload, we have to deload. Okay, it's just the way it is. So the relationship between the two is that speed work is easier on recovery. And the stuff that Winning found is that as long as you focus on the speed, you can go even lighter and lighter, and you recover even better. Right? We recover even more effectively. So, like in my case, I try not to, as I do this more and more, go over 50% total 1 rep max with the bands and chains added in. So oftentimes I'll program things like 25% bar weight, 25% accommodating resistance, which is, again, band or chain weight. And that's percentages of your max. All right, this is very easy to recover from no matter how fast you move it, even if you end up doing, a fair number of sets, because we're only doing 2 to 3 reps. Okay, we're only doing 2 to 3 reps. Now, the thing to remember is that this is woven in for recovery to a large extent. Now, when it comes to force production, how many heavy singles are we really going to do? And we know that heavy singles are going to give us the most force production. Okay, you're going to have to produce more force than you do on a heavy double, a heavy triple, so training maxes or whatever that are 2 or 3 reps. You're producing less force. Okay, we're producing less force. But when we go over to do speed work, if a lot of what we do with the reps, like people say, well, why do you do 3s on bench and 2 on squat? Because the amount of time that it takes to lock the weight. So let's say you come in and you do, 6 to 10 or whatever, 6 to 12, total sets to where the concentric time to complete the speed reps is equal to the amount of time that you do a 1 rep max. Well, that means you might have produced the same amount of force production, right, for the same amount of time as a 1 rep max 10 times. 10 times in a single workout. Okay, what does this equate to when we go back over to the heavy work? Well, possibly a similar training response. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but in terms of learning to develop force, it is. It is the same in terms of learning to develop force. We have to see it in that context, and we have to understand it in that context. All right? And that is what we are looking for ideally. We're looking for that. We want to have a similar amount of force being produced for the similar amount of time as a 1 rep max. And if you're doing 1 rep maxing, it does carry back over to 1 rep maxing. But we're doing both concurrently within the same week. All right? And we're limiting the number of heavy work to the amount that we can easily recover from without feeling beat up. Speed work shouldn't leave us feeling beat up at all, of course. Okay, and we do that on the other 2 days every week. So if we do 2 days of the max work, 2 days of the speed work, the recovery is dramatically better than if we just try to go heavy all the time. It's dramatically better. Now, as Dave Tate likes to put it, he likes to call it two fast days and 2 slow days. All right? Because we're moving the weight much slower on a heavy single. Moving it much, much slower. So fast days and slow days. But the idea is that we are still trying to produce maximum force on both. But when they're woven together this way, what happens? Much easier on recovery. Okay? And they don't interfere with each other. In other words, if you do a heavy deadlift on Tuesday and try to do another heavy deadlift on Friday, it's going to start catching up to you. But if you do a heavy deadlift on Tuesday and you do speed pulls for multiple sets on Friday, they don't impact each other in terms of the recovery, energy systems, everything else used to the same degree. They don't impact each other negatively to the same extent. All right. So the end result is a larger overall training response with easier recovery. Now, some people say, well, why don't you just do only speed work? Because we're not getting the heavy work in. We do that. And you're not necessarily going to get that maximum force production trained to the same degree that if we do both. Okay. Other people will say, well, why not do just only the max work then? Well, it's harder on recovery. It beats you up more. We also don't get the speed strength element. We don't get the practice of the first reps. We don't get the additional volume of producing this maximum force that we get. Okay, so they feed into each other very, very effectively. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.